Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here, welcome back to the railway and welcome to the very last video on Great Britain's Big Four. Well, it might not be the very last video I ever do on the Big Four. I might come back in future years and try it again, but it's certainly going to be the last video in this little series that I've made this year. And over the last few months, I've made videos on the Southern Railway, the LNER and the Great Western. So if you want to see those videos, you can find them on my channel. I'll link the most recent one up there. But today it is the turn of the LMS, and according to the comments, the LMS does seem to be a pretty popular one, but today you guys get to have your say on which is the greatest, because to mark the end of this series, it is poll day. So over on my community tab, I'm going to post a poll so that you can vote on which of the Big Four is the greatest. And it will be fascinating to see which one wins. I really couldn't call it. I think you could make a case for any of the Big Four being the winners. So yeah, who knows? So yeah, if you feel particularly passionately about any of the Big Four, today is the day you can show your support to them. And they really need it. So head over there and vote, and I will announce the winner on the next Model Railway News video. But don't vote yet, because I've still got to show one of our candidates, and that is the LMS, the London, Midland and Scottish Railway. And yeah, there is a lot of locos to show today, not quite as many as on the other Big Four videos. I don't know whether that's just because the model railway manufacturers haven't given LMS as much love. I don't know. Maybe that's because the LMS just produced good engines and they didn't need to replace them all the time. I don't know, but I've included like a diesel, there's pre-grouping stuff in here, and I've only just been able to fill the sidings. So I hope you enjoy them. We're going to start off by looking at tank engines, then we're going to move on to classic freight and then mixed traffic, and then we're going to finish off with the most famous of the LMS engines, and those of course are the express passenger locos. I've got quite a few of those. So hope you enjoy this one. Let's take a look at some LMS engines. Let's see what they're like. So here it is, my LMS fleet, and I tell you what, it's amazing just how many gorgeous LMS engines there are. I reckon the LMS stands a really good chance of winning the polls. Anyway, you can see particularly up near the sort of mixed traffic and express passenger end just how many locos are carrying that Crimson Lake or maroon livery. So I guess I could call this the Red Sea. Although on the freight end there are lots of blackened engines as well, so maybe I'll just drop the stupid nicknames and get on with it. What do you reckon? Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So we'll start down at the tiny tank engine end with this. It's clearly in an LMS livery, but this actually dates back to the LMYR, doesn't it? Yeah, the LMYR Pug. But I've got to show it because it is in an LMS livery. The next loco is technically in a BR livery, but it's still a pre-grouping loco. That is the Midland 1F, I think it is. This next design is definitely an LMS one, and I've gone with the LMS livery as well to show it. So that is, of course, the famous Ginty. And then next up, we've got another pre-grouping design. A lot of the tank engines are actually. That is the Webb coal tank. Comment below if you can remember which railway that came from. It's on the tip of my tongue, but we'll just use it as a commenting opportunity. Never mind. Okay, the next one, look at this. This is also a Midland design, I believe. This is the 1P. Absolutely love that one. It's a Johnson loco, that. And then we've got, I believe, still yet another LMYR design. That is the Class 5, not to be mixed up with the Black 5. I don't know why you'd mix those up, but yeah, it's the LMYR Class 5. Then behind it, we're getting on to the larger tank engines. That is the LMS Fowler 4P, very elegant that. Included with the tank engines, although you could make a case for that being an express passenger loco, because they were very large and quite speedy, I think. So this is the most famous of the reverse Pacific tank engines of the LMS, but there's also this one, which is a bit lesser known. So this is the Stania version. This is the Stania, is it a 4P or was this a 5? Can't remember now. It's the Stania 264 tank. There you go. And then we've got this one, which is a later design. Well, it's later than the Fowler one. That is the Fairburn tank, and that one's weathered, so that one looks particularly battle-worn. And then we're moving on to a few of the famous freighters here. So if we move over to the back, we have the 8F. And only this year did I get a Hornby 8F in the LMS livery, so it's awesome that I can show that. Then we have this. This is a 4P, very, very famous freight locomotive, and there are a lot of these produced as well. That's probably why they're so famous. And then we've got a slightly lesser known one. This is the, I think it's a Dealey 3F. It might have been a Johnson. In real life, there was a whole different range of these produced. Loads of designers made their mark on them, but yeah, we just call it a 3F, or you call it whatever you like. You call it Martin if you want, but it wouldn't really make much sense. Okay, let's move on round to the front of the turntable with this loco. This is known as the G2A. Again, this is technically pre-grouping, but it did pass through the LMS, I believe, so I've got it here. Such an odd-looking loco, that one. And then you've got this. Is this the IVAT? I think it's, well, it's a class 4. It might be an IVAT class 4, I think. Very ugly thing. I don't know if technically these were mixed traffic, but it's too hideous to put with the mixed traffic loco, so I haven't done it. But yeah, that is an LMS loco, despite its BR livery in this case. And then you've got this, which is the IVAT 2MT. This is quite an old model, actually, but it depicts quite a well-known and popular class. I would love to get a newer IVAT loco. That would be lovely to see. And then you've got this one. This is a classic LMS loco. This is the Stania Mogul. Looks a lot like a Black 5, but it isn't. If you look, it does have a 260 wheel configuration. And yeah, it's quite a nice model. And if you're missing the Black 5, well, here it is. Yeah, this is the Black 5. This is my Hornby Black 5, possibly the most famous of the LMS locos, particularly the sort of freighty mixed traffic sort. And we are very much into mixed traffic territory now, so you've got that. And then you've got this very similar loco, and I suppose the biggest difference between this class and the Black 5 is the liveries. Yeah, this tended to have nicer liveries for some reason. This is the Jubilee, yes, and it is in an LMS livery, although it says British Railways on the tender. And then just behind the way here, we have this loco. This is the Hughes Crab, another very, very famous LMS loco. And of course, from now on, the liveries are going to get much nicer as well. So if you love liveries, this is going to be good for you. Then we've got this, which is the Patriot. Yeah, I do love a Patriot. This is a Bachmann Patriot 460, technically mixed traffic, but that just looks like a passenger loco, doesn't it? And now we are on to the proper passenger locos. So we've got this. This is, of course, the Royal Scot. Gutted not to show one in LMS livery, but my only LMS Royal Scot is an Airfix one. No offence to anyone that likes the Airfix Royal Scot, but I don't. I couldn't bring myself to show it today. But yeah, that is a BR Green Royal Scot. And then we've got one of the smaller passenger locos. This is the 2P. Now, I do have more modern 2P models than this, but they're not in LMS livery. So I've opted for the old Triang one because this does have the lined LMS black. So I actually quite like that thing. I've always loved that model. It's not detailed, it's not a particularly great mechanism or anything, but it runs well and I still love the thing. Yeah, very nice. And then we've got this. I bet you didn't expect to see this. Well, you might if you knew I'd got one. But yeah, this is the Turbomotive. This was never a commercially produced model, at least not in 00 gauge ready to run. Hopefully that will change one day. I'd be very surprised if there is no manufacturer out there planning one of these. But yeah, this is somebody, not me, someone cleverer than I am, converted an old Triang Princess into this model. And yeah, it's pretty cool. And then you've got this one in front of it. I think this is the smallest of the express passenger locos. This is the Caledonian single wheeler, which obviously didn't originate from the LMS. It was a Caledonian design, but this is in an LMS livery. So yeah, love it. Absolutely gorgeous. I could look at that thing all day. Imagine what a new tooled version of this would look like. Amazing. And then we've got this. This is, how many of these engines are super famous? This one's famous. This is the Midland Compound, or the 1000 class, I think they're sometimes called. A lovely 440 passenger engine. That's a Hornby one. And then we have this, yet another incredibly famous design. This is the Stania Princess in the gorgeous Crimson Lake. This is the latest Hornby one. So yeah, it looks pretty nice. And then behind it, over the way there, we've got another incredibly famous loco, the Coronation class. This is more or less in original condition with the streamlining on it. Which one is that? That one is City of Birmingham, I believe. It's not Duchess of Hamilton. Every time I show this, people call it Duchess of Hamilton. It looks exactly the same, and if Hornby produced a Duchess of Hamilton, it would be the same model. but no, this one has a slightly different name. And then to the left of it there, we have the same class. This is the Duchess, or the Coronation, but this doesn't have the streamlining on it. So I thought it would be worthwhile showing what it looks like without the streamlining. And then finally, I did promise a diesel, so I've got one here. This is known as the LMS 10,000 locomotive. Unfortunately, this is in a BR livery, but it still looks LMS, doesn't it? It just looks like a Jubilee livery with the black and then the lighter lining on it. But yeah, got to show that one. It's not very often that I've showed a diesel. I don't think I've ever showed one in this series so far. So quite funny that I'm finishing off with that. So there you have it then, my LMS fleet of locomotives. Absolutely gorgeous. And now we're coming to the fun part of the video where I'm going to run some of these for you. So what I've decided to do is pick the most famous, the biggest stars of the fleet and run those for you, so that it's going to be like an LMS hit parade, if you will. So let's get started, see if you can guess what's coming. We'll start off with tank engines. So we're starting off down at the tank engine end of the spectrum, and if we're talking sort of LMS stars, the Ginty is really the only option here. So the Fowler 3F was introduced in 1924, and it represented the ultimate development in a huge long line of 6 coupled tank engines. Despite being produced after grouping as part of the LMS fleet, the design was very much a product of the Midland Railway. Some of the Ginties were in fact based on rebuilt Midland 2441 locomotives, which actually dated back to the 19th century, so long before the LMS came to be. The design was never bettered though, and 422 Ginties were built in just over 7 years, and the class remained in service right up until almost the end of British Steam in 1967. And because so many of these were built, a healthy 9 examples remain under preservation, while the rest obviously were unfortunately scrapped. Moving on to freight then, there is one LMS freight locomotive that stands out above the rest. Very popular, very numerous, and so the 4F, the Fowler 4F, was the easy choice for this loco. So these originated on the LMS railway and they were designed by Henry Fowler, and the 4F was intended for medium freight work, and they also earned themselves the nickname Duck Sixes. Like the Ginty though, the 4F design actually dates back to the pre-LMS period, to 1911 I think it was, with the introduction of the Midland Railway 3835 class. The 4Fs were a slight modification of these, but they were built much later between 1924 and 1941, and these became the ultimate 060 tender engine design on the LMS railway. The class were generally very successful, except for an overheating issue with the axle box bearings, which was actually very common with the 060s of the LMS, and they let this be a problem for far too long, in my opinion. They solved this problem eventually by incorporating mechanical lubricators into the design, which did fix it as far as I know. Now, a massive 575 4Fs were built over the 17-year period, and all but 3 of them were withdrawn and scrapped between 1959 and 1966. Right, I'm going to do a couple of mixed traffic locos next, because there are a few famous ones that I just could not miss out. Here's the first one, possibly one of the most well-known LMS locos there is. It is the Black 5, and this was a legendary design by William Stanier that was first introduced in 1934, so this is not a pre-grouping loco, of course. So it was 1934 when the first of a whopping 842 of these were completed. The class was intended for mixed traffic, and indeed the Black 5s were seen hauling any and all types of service throughout their lifetimes. The design took much inspiration from the Great Western Hull class, funnily enough. It's pretty crazy, isn't it? And they were also hugely successful in their own right, of course. Carried on from the hulls was the 2 outside cylinders, the general boiler layout, and the big 6-foot driving wheels. And due to their success, the class continued to be built several years after nationalisation of 1948 by British Railways. And beyond this, the Black 5 formed the basis of the BR Standard Class 5, of which 172 were produced up until 1957. Now, despite nearly 900 examples of this design being produced, only 18 of them remain in preservation today, withdrawal having taken place between 1961 and 1968. The final withdrawal took place on the very final day of steam on British Railways, which of course is the ultimate testament to their design and their longevity. There you go, so that is the first half of the running session, and we've had quite a bit of freight in the first half, so I'm guessing you know what's coming in the second half. We're going to get to the much more beautiful locos, and obviously we're going to be running some coaches as well, so stay tuned for that. I'm going to change these over, but for you it will take but a second. So I'll be right back with some passenger trains. So like I say, this is another mixed traffic locomotive, but I didn't really want to do this video without running this one. So it's another very famous design. It is the Crab, the LMS Hughes Crabs. And these were a class of 260, so mogul mixed traffic locomotives built between 1926 and 1932 to the design of George Hughes. 245 of these were produced in total over that 6-year period. They earned themselves the nickname Crabs because of, well, supposedly two possible reasons, maybe even both. The first due to the positioning of the outside cylinders, which obviously slightly resemble a crab's pincers, as you can tell. And the second reason apparently was the scuttling sensation if you're on board the locomotive when it's under load. And I did get a taste of this on the Great Central when I was riding behind one, but apparently you feel it best on the actual footplate. In general, the Crabs were fairly successful and the entire class survived until 1961. After that, though, as usual, all but 3 were scrapped, and those 3 did enter preservation. Okay, so now we're moving on to the very elegant passenger locomotives of the LMS, and I'm keeping with the theme of all-stars, so here we have the Royal Scot, which was a class of 70 locomotives introduced to the LMS in 1927, and this is another design of Henry Fowler. Now, up until this point, the LMS, a bit like the Midland Railway, had maintained a fleet of smaller engines, such as the Midland Compound and the Clawton class, but by the late 1920s, Fowler decided that these were just inadequate for the growing demands, and he proposed a brand new compound Pacific Express locomotive. Now, initially Fowler's Pacific was rejected and the 460 Royal Scot was born instead. It would in fact take another 6 years before a Pacific design would be approved on the LMS. And this class was introduced without testing, and so lots of modifications were made on the fly to get them up to scratch. But after that, the class did eventually become quite successful, and it's fairly well known just how mighty these Royal Scot engines were. Sadly though, withdrawal took place over the early 1960s and all but 2 examples were scrapped. Neither of the 2 remaining locos are in original condition, as all of them were rebuilt. Finally then, I'm not going to say this loco is the most attractive of the LMS because I think that's a bit too subjective, but I think most people will agree that this is the most distinctive design. It is of course the Coronation class, also known as the Duchess. And these were Stanier's final Pacifics. They were introduced in 1937 and they resembled a larger and more powerful version of the earlier Princess class, which we saw earlier on. In fact, they were basically superior to the Princess in every way, and thus about 3 times as many were built. There were 38 Coronations in total, built between 1937 and 1948. And these were often considered the ultimate British passenger locomotive, and no other Pacific ever really exceeded them in terms of their performance and efficiency. And there were slight variations between different examples. Most notably, some had streamlining and others didn't. And in fact, after 1946, streamlining was no longer included on newly built locomotives, and it was also gradually removed from the old ones as well. In total, only 3 Coronation locos have been preserved. I'm not sure how many of those are actually running. Not all of those are running, that's for sure, but the remainder, as usual, were scrapped. Well, there you go then folks, and I gave you the full Coronation Scot treatment at the end there with a bit of a higher speed run from the Coronation. Went with the streamlined blue one in the end because I think that's more the classic colour, isn't it? Anyway, that is it for my video all about LMS, and therefore that is it for my series on the Big Four. So the only thing left to do now is to cast your votes on the poll over on my community tab and decide which of the Big Four is the greatest. And then I'll be able to accurately say which one is the favourite among my viewers, which is pretty cool. But thank you for watching. Do comment down below, let me know what you thought. Which is your favourite LMS locomotive? Did I run it? Do you wish I had? If not, yeah, do let me know. For now though, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you very soon with some more videos. Alright, cheers folks, take care.